Hey, 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 it's your favorite slightly hood therapist. And per usual, I am excited again because I've got somebody that I'm chatting with today.
Hey.
This is Mrs. Christina Butler Tuggle, not
Mm,
Tuggle Butler. I do this as long as I've known her. I cannot get it right. Butler is your maiden name.
it is.
Tuggle is your married name, which is your current name. And the only reason you still carry Butler is because you never changed your professional license over, right?
Yeah. Yep. And I don't need nobody finding me on social media.
Okay, so why don't we start with let's talk a little bit about how we know each other. I almost don't even want to share the story because I know how you're gonna go there.
Because
But
you was mean.
this is gonna be the one and only time any of you hear somebody say that I was mean. Okay, let's start there. But please do tell. I don't remember it the way that you're trying to tell it, but I'm gonna let you tell it
Okay. So
first.
let me just say, I was hired at PCS in February of 2018. And I feel like it was like the 18th. I'm going to say it was the 18th. And so on the 19th, they took me around to meet all the people in the building. They said, hey, this is Christina. She's a new therapist here. Everybody was so welcoming. I got to Dr. Futrell's office. Knock, knock, knock. They said, hey, Dr. Futrell, this is Christina. She's one of the new therapists. This nice therapist looks back and was like,
Ma'am.
and turned her head. I was like, oh.
No, I did not swing my head like that.
Okay,
Let's pause.
maybe that's a little bit dramatic.
Yes,
She did
your
like this.
answer.
She did like this. And then she turned her head back to typing on her computer, whatever. And I get it. It was lunchtime. And if you know Dr. Futrell, she don't play about her food. But I was like, oh my gosh. I went home and told my husband, like, dang, I felt so welcome at this job, but there was this one therapist, and I don't understand. Most people like me, but I don't know if she liked me. She don't even know me, but it hurt my feelings.
Okay, so yes, but I have apologized several times. But this is a good so you and I have talked about this before, right? Like being in a work environment where you feel um, unwelcome and you feel unappreciated. Like that was the space that I was in at the time, and you got to later experience some of that. And this will probably be a topic that I'll talk about later at some point, like being a woman of color working in a certain type of environment can be stressful, and it can alter your mood a lot and change the way you interact with people. So I can be fair. Yes, you were coming around during lunch. Why they would choose to do it during lunch, it makes no sense either. Okay, because everybody probably wasn't even in the building. And yes, I'm trying to lunch because y'all working me like a Hebrew slave for the other hours. So no, I don't want to converse. And like I said, I wasn't in a good space, but it worked out because
It
you
worked out.
you forced yourself into my life.
I did, but I think also to add to that, perception is everything, right? And so I think it is, and so to make the story short, my husband really encouraged me to go back and have another conversation with Narisha. And so it's in my mind, I was like, she closed off, she don't want to talk. Really, Narisha was busy. She had other stuff to do, so she wasn't trying to be dismissive of me in that moment. And I would have never known that had we not had a discussion about it, and kind of talked about it, which shifted, our relationship, our friendship, all the things of the ships that we're in right now.
Yeah.
But
We
needless
got a lot of
to say,
ships.
we have a lot of ships. Needless to say, like she said, I have forced myself because I literally told her, hey, you're gonna be my friend. I don't know if you know that, but you're gonna be my friend.
And I accept it, especially when she was like, "You want to go see Beyonce?" Hells yeah, I want to go see Beyonce. Where we going? What I'm wearing? So yes, that is our story. And then like the thing too that sticks out to me was at that time you were working towards your licensure. And people don't know this about me. I love to help and I love to try to teach. And you were like, I'm trying to get my license. And I was like, you need this and you need that. And have you thought about this? And even though, and we'll talk about this now. So you were seeking your LPC and I am an LCSW. So that was different. But so talk a little bit about like, because you were telling me some stuff. I was learning a little bit at that time, a lot of the differences. Like I knew there
Yeah.
were some, but I was like, why you gotta do that? And what's happening?
Yeah, so I feel like there's a big, I don't know. So we know that LCSWs have been around for a long time, and LPCs is something that's, I'm not gonna say fairly new, but it's newer. And so there's a lot of respect when people see LCSWs. And so a lot of my requirements, and I guess I want to say I feel like after the fact, after working all this time for this licensure, I feel like we don't get the respect that we need, or it is held to the same status as LCSWs in regards to insurances that we can get approved with, or recently we weren't able to even have jobs at the VA, and that's something that has changed over time after lobbying, but it wasn't recognized as a valid license versus the degrees are the same. And I feel like counseling is more into approaches and all those things that are evidence-based fact practices, and being able to do counseling is still not held to that same standard, and we run into some challenges just being able to get licensed and moving forward, even down to some of the requirements that are needed. And so I don't know if I answered your question or if I'm rambling, so dial me in.
No, you did. I think like so even like to be more specific for people. So for you to achieve your LPC, what are the base requirements? How many clinical hours do you have to have? Supervision hours? How many tests do you have to take?
All right, so that's one thing that's I think is really key. LPC requirements is different. So let's just look at Tennessee. Tennessee requires that you have to take the NCE, which is equivalent to a LMSW exam for
Okay,
y'all.
so the NCE is the National Counselors. We are terrible with these acronyms. We're gonna move on. But you
Yes.
have to take the NCE, which is the equivalent to the test that you have to take to get your LMSW, which is interestingly enough, we didn't used to have to do that, but we do now. So continue.
Right. And so I say that here in Tennessee. In Texas, the NCE is the only exam that you have to take to be licensed as a fully licensed practitioner. So there's different requirements across the country, depending on the state that you in, that you live in, that might say, hey, this one exam is sufficient enough. Whereas Tennessee says, okay, cool, you can take the NCE and you can be a licensed professional counselor, but you can't diagnose, or you still, if you're working in the clinic and you need to diagnose, you still need to be under supervision. Well, who's going to do that? And so Tennessee requires us to also take the NCMHCE.
So
I can tell you what all that is, but that's the
let me slow you down. Let me slow you down. So the NCE, this is the reason why it's an equivalent or similar to the LMSW, because an LMSW, a licensed master social worker, also has to work under someone's supervision. And it just came to me, NCE is National Counselor's Exam.
Yes, sorry, I knew that. Duh.
Right. Okay, so let's go back. So, okay, in Tennessee, you take the NCE and you have to take another exam. That's not students.
Well, it is. So we take that NCMHCE, which is the more clinical version. So the NCE is really just basic foundation information. It's, do you know theories? Do you know different foundations of counseling principles and ethics and all those things? And then the NCMHCE is more clinical because we spend a lot of time diagnosing, being able to do differential diagnosing, and it's really in depth. Like, it was probably one of the hardest exams that I've ever taken, but I feel like it has made me a very good clinician because it was really more application of what it is. Like, okay, you know this knowledge, and we can go in there and say, you know, this is Sigmund Freud or this is whatever. But now I need to know that you can differentiate by just this general information that you've learned and be able to apply it in this setting based on this case study that we've given you, and go through the picking the best fit, right? What is the best fit?
Using it in actual practice.
Yeah, and even down to the interventions, even down to the referral process. And so I feel like it's equipped me as a therapist more so to ensure that if I was going to diagnose someone, that I have met at least the standard that says that I can do some due diligence in that area. Although my personal opinion by diagnosing is something totally different. But
so we're going to come back to that, because as you were saying that, I was thinking I would love for you to share your personal opinion about diagnosing, because I have one as well, right? I think we all do, but continue. So the NCE, and then the second test, the
NCMHCE. So it's like National Clinical Mental Health Examination.
Okay. Okay. And then what happens?
Then, so you take that. So let's back up. So after you take the NCE in Tennessee, you do your 3,000 hours. So we have to do 3,000 hours, which is, I think, the same as social workers. And we need 150 hours of supervision. 75 of those hours can be from anybody that is a licensed practitioner, whether you're a social work or a clinical psychologist, a psychiatrist, it doesn't matter. That first 75 can be from anybody. And then specifically that last 75 needs to come from somebody who's a licensed professional counselor, mental health service provider, supervisor.
So the first 75, now you said it can come from anybody, but is it anybody who is licensed to supervise, or anybody who has any type of license can do the first 75?
Anybody that has any type of license.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I would say it would benefit you. Like my person who did me, she was a clinical psychologist. Now, I don't know if she had a supervision status or not, but Tennessee didn't ask for that. They said the person who, like, what counts is this last 75, like, needs to be from this particular person to ensure. Yeah. Because you think about it, you go to agencies, you receive supervision for agencies. Doesn't mean that everybody at that agency is going to have that. But I knew, like, you had your supervision license as well, so that would have counted. And I'm sure it could be. Let me speak for this. Well, I ain't even gonna go there because I don't want to confuse people. So I'm just gonna say what I said, and I'm gonna leave it at that. And if I'm wrong, I could be wrong, because this was a few years ago and things have changed. So just keep that in note, put that out there. But that first 75 can come from anybody, but the last 75 or whatever, 75 of them need to come from somebody that is a LPC MHSP supervisor per the state of Tennessee.
Okay. So take your NCE exam, get your 3,000 hours, have 150 of those hours supervised, 75 by a licensed provider, we'll just say that, and the other 75 have to be supervised by an LPC MHSP. And then you take another test.
Which is that test we were talking about, the NCMHCE.
Right, and then now you are an LPC. Do you have your MHSP designation after that?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. So that's what you get. If you take that NCMHE exam, you'll get your designation. So I technically went a different route. Tennessee is a little bit different than other states. Like in Texas makes you enter a contract that goes straight to the state. And from day one, the minute you enter supervision, they want to see who's your supervisor and you're tracking that. Tennessee was a little different, whereas they were like, hey, you got two options. You can do this temporary license, which is what I did, because coming from Texas, I was like, I need to have this stuff done. So it didn't make sense to me not to have a temp license to work under supervision. I had my supervisor already listed. And so when I finished my hours, I didn't have to submit anything because they had already pretty much said the only thing you need is to send me this last piece of paper that said that you were done and passed this exam. And so it took no time. My number from my temp license to my license didn't even change. It just went from temp to fully LPC, MHSP. But in Texas, you have to go through these other steps. I think the other thing that's a little bit confusing too is that if you don't do the temp license route here, they pretty much say that you have 5 years from the time that you start accumulating that per the contract that you sign with somebody to get it done.
Right. Or you
But
just,
there,
or you gonna have to start over, or
well, but that, I feel like that's a little loose, right? Because who's tell you when that 5 years started, right? So I could have graduated school in 2008, and then didn't start
right.
till 5 years later. Then I got 5 years from the time that whoever I signed that agreement with and submit that time frame. So I feel like it's a little bit loose. Most people do it before that, but you have to have at least two. I think it has to be 2.5 years. So either way, you're gonna be 2 years in a hole before you can be licensed. So somewhere in there.
Yeah, that's definitely different. And well, so now for us as an LCSW, you get your master's in social work. You have to take the test to get your LMSW, and then you have to be supervised by an LCSW who is designated to be an LCSW supervisor. You cannot just have any LCSW to do it. You have to have 3,000 hours, just like an LPC, but your supervision has to be 1 hour with your supervisor per every 100 clinical hours, I believe. So that's a little extensive. Um, and then you got to take another test, which I heard is the hardest test to take, the LCSW. And it was hard for me. I mean, I'm one of those people that has test anxiety, like, and I talked on here before about imposter syndrome. She's, my little imposter, she's smaller now, but back then she was running rampant. I remember crying, like, on the way to go take the test and having to calm myself down. And then I took the test and the lady came over and she was like, "You want to see what you got?" And I'm sitting there with my eyes closed. She was like, "Honey, you got to open your eyes." I opened my eyes and I passed and I went in the bathroom and cried again because it was like,
Yeah.
it's a lot of work. I think people don't understand whether it's LCSW, whether it's LPC, whether it's LADAC. Like, we put a lot of work. We put a lot of education, a lot of test taking and study time, a lot of, think about taking 3 years out of your life for people who haven't done this before. Take 3 years out of your life and you are literally having to talk to somebody for 3 years about what you're doing with clients or in your work environments in order to prove yourself to be worthy to stand alone and work without having someone supervise you. Like, that can be a lot.
Yeah, I agree with you. And speaking of which, I don't think people realize just how many people might take those exams more than once, or then how is it a reflection of you, or even it doesn't matter how great of a clinician you are, you might not even be able to start that process of being fully licensed because this exam, which doesn't define you, but it might move you up the bracket financially. It tells you what you can do with your life, you know what I mean? And so I think about my sister, those of you don't, I have a sister, she is a business partner of mine, but she's also taken the LCSW exam. She's taken it twice and it's been quite challenging. And she actually shared some data with me that they released, which said that there was like some bias. Basically, Black folks failed the exam way more than other races. And mind you, the numbers are a little bit different because you're looking at a population of 100,000 people, but of that 100,000 people, you have 30,000 of them Black, and of that 30,000, you have 50% of them failing. I'm not saying that's exactly what the number said, but just to give an example, it was high, right? So it just, to say how you say, yes, it's a lot of work that goes into what we do to be able to do this this job in and of itself, and then to have this one exam define how the rest of our life is going to shape out is a lot to take in. So yes, I understand them tears.
Yeah, yeah. And that makes me think about too, like I always, when people contact me about supervision, I ask like, what are you doing with your life right now in terms of your vocation? Because some people, they're ambitious or they want to fast track and they want to graduate and they want to, get ready to take their test and they may not be able to work in their field yet. And I always try to encourage them, like if you're not actually working in your field, can you do something that's giving you the experience? Because that test is not true false. It's not what is completely right or what is completely wrong. It's a very gray area test. And I think you do better if you're already in the practice. It gives you a better perspective because it's going to ask you a question. You got four, options there, but the options are what is the best of the four, and
Yeah.
you got to take some of the subjectivity, not some of it. You have to take your subjectivity out of it and be really clinically focused with your thinking. And that's hard to do if